The Twin Suns of Velitas. Before the stars bowed two emperors, two brothers watched twin suns set over a burning world. Chapter 1. The Sons of Velitas. Twin suns burned low over the terraced fields of Velitas, casting long golden shadows through the glassy towers of irrigation engines and into the quiet valley below. Dust swirled lazily in the air, shimmering like gold leaf caught in the wind. The scent of sun vine nectar hung thick and sweet. Harvest time was near. In the soft soil of the lower fields, Tyrus and Kalin wrestled in the mud. "Yield, or be fed to the crows," Tyrus shouted, pinning his brother's arm. "You fight like a merchant," Kalin grunted, flipping him with a kick. "Not a true Velitan." They were twins, 16 cycles old, same brown curl, same sharp jaw, same defiant fire in their eyes. But even strangers could tell them apart. Tyrus was the steadier one. Careful. His speech was clean, shaped by a dream of someday wearing the crimson armor of the Legionis Caelestis. Kalin was wild, laughing, and full of challenge. He ran like the wind, loved climbing towers he wasn't allowed near, and once slapped a tax collector's horse just to see what would happen. Tyrus rolled to his feet and dusted off his tunic. "You tore the stitching again." "You fight dirty," Kalin replied, grinning. "I adapt." From the terrace above, a voice called out, low and stern. "Boys!" Their father, Decimus, stood at the edge of the irrigation cistern, his arms crossed. Sunlight caught on the old iron band he wore on his left wrist, a soldier's mark from the old wars. "No scuffling when the dignitary arrives," he said, stepping down the ramp. "They come to inspect the fields, not the state of your teeth." "Yes, father," both said in chorus, already wiping grime from their arms. The farm had stood for 3 generations, nestled in the fertile crescent of Velitas Secundus, the second moon of the gas giant Duro. Most called it a backwater. The Saturnian Empire called it a frontier. But to the twins, it was home. The vines here fed 10 minor moons and a Deep Space Legion garrison. Sweet, glowing cords of fruit that matured under twin suns and moon-filtered light. Their mother, Livia, tended the harvest joys and hummed songs of the old ways. Not hymns sanctioned by the Empire, but the old songs. Half-forgotten melodies said to coax growth from the soil. She never sang them when the inspector ships came. That afternoon, a dull thrum rolled through the valley. A ship was descending, imperial design. Sharp-nosed, wings swept like a predatory bird. The twins ran to the overlook, dirt flying beneath their boots. The vessel settled with military precision on the landing pad outside the village. Centurion Valen disembarked first, his armor gleaming crimson and silver, a gladius strapped at his side, and a command tablet slung over his shoulder. He was flanked by 2 soldiers and followed by a narrow-eyed man in a black toga edged with gold. Procurator Silenus, an agent of the Imperial Grain Office. Decimus met them at the base of the hill. "Centurion," he said stiffly. "Procurator." Silenus waved a hand dismissively. "Skip the ceremony, farmer. Your yield records." As Decimus led the officials through the terraces, the twins shadowed them from above, leaping from platform to platform. "Why does he dress like he owns the moons?" Kalin muttered. "Because he probably does," Tyrus replied. They watched as Silanus poked, prodded, and scanned the vines without so much as a word of thanks. One of the harvest droids malfunctioned, sparking briefly, and Solanus sneered. "Your machines are archaic," he said. "You've filed no upgrade requests. Why?" "We make do," Decimus said. "That isn't the answer I asked for." The Centurion interjected. "We're on a schedule, Procurator." Silenus scowled, but relented. "Very well. Load the sample crates. We'll return within 3 cycles to collect. Be prepared." He turned on his heel and strode back toward the ship. But before the ramp closed, the Procurator paused, turned, and said something that chilled the bones of everyone present. "Unpleasant news from the outer moons. Vandals have been spotted beyond the Pallian Belt. Patrols have doubled. We recommend local militia readiness. Good day." The hatch sealed behind him. The twins looked at each other. Vandals. That night, the family sat at a long table under hanging lamps of glowing vine fruit. Shadows danced on the ceiling like ghosts from the hills. Their father drank quietly. Their mother spoke little, her eyes distant. "The Vandals won't come here," Tyrus said. "We're too deep in Saturnian space." "That's what the priest on Phoros said," Kalin muttered. "Now their temple is a crater." "Enough," Decimus said. "This isn't a forum." "But if they did come," Kalin pressed, "what would we do? Fight with pitchforks?" "We'd hide. Like cowards." Tyrus scoffed. "The Empire would send help." Decimus slammed his cup down. "There will be no fighting. No talk of fighting. This is not your war." A long silence followed. Then softly Livia began to hum. A low, ancient tune, full of sorrow and old strength. The vines outside glowed faintly brighter. The song stirred the air. "I thought you said not to sing the old songs," Kalin whispered. Livia met his eyes. "Sometimes the soil remembers things the Empire wants us to forget." Later, while the household slept, Tyrus stood watch on the eastern hill with his father's old gladius at his side. He wasn't supposed to carry it, but tonight felt different. The stars shimmered, wind rustled through the vine blades. Then a shadow moved in the sky. At first it was small, then it grew. A silent thunderbird of metal and flame, then another dot, and another. The air began to shake, and suddenly, sirens. Tyrus ran. The attack came fast and without warning. Dropships screamed over the hills, disgorging shapes in black armor. Vandals, humanoid and ragged, wielding plasma axes and flak-spewing repeaters. Farmhouses burned. Civilians screamed. Droids exploded in showers of sparks. Tyrus reached the house just as the roof shattered. A Vandal warrior burst through the wall, swinging a molten blade. Tyrus dodged, slashed. His first kill. The man crumpled. Then another grabbed him, threw him down. "Tyrus!" Kalin tackled the raider. The twins fought side by side, back to back, bloodied and breathless. Then a blast. The ceiling fell in. Dust. Smoke. Screaming. Their parents' voices gone. The twins staggered into the open, clutching each other. From the hills, Imperial dropships descended. Centurion Valen led a counterforce, dozens of legionnaires in formation, repelling the last of the raiders. But it was too late. The homestead was a ruin. Vine fields burned red and gold. Tyrus turned, just as Kalen was struck in the face with a rifle butt. "No!" A Vandal slaver dragged Kalen away toward a waiting shuttle. Tyrus lunged, but a legionnaire pulled him back. "Let him go, boy. You'll be taken too." Kalen reached for him, eyes wild. "Tyrus." Their hands touched, then broke. Kalen vanished inside the ship, and then he was gone. Tyrus screamed his brother's name into the firelit sky. All that remained was the pendant torn from Kalen's neck, its twin half still hanging from Tyrus's. He clutched it to his chest. Above them, the Twin Suns of Velitas set on a broken home. Chapter 2. Blood in the Stars. Tyrus sat at the edge of a military dropship, his fingers clenched around the broken pendant at his chest. His nails were still caked with soil from Velitas, and his tunic, torn, singed, stained with ash, had not been changed since the attack. Below him, the once verdant fields of his home shrank into a fading crescent of smoke and fire. The Saturnian relief fleet had arrived too late. Most of Velitas was now ash, its scattered survivors packed into the bellies of orbital transports like livestock. The Empire had a word for people like him now: displaced dependents. He hated it. A centurion passed, pausing briefly. "You're of age?" he asked. Tyrus didn't answer. 16? 17? Tyrus looked up, jaw tight. 16. My brother too. The centurion nodded grimly and moved on. Tyrus sat in silence. His brother was gone, taken into the stars by raiders, slavers, monsters, and he had done nothing to stop it. They were ferried to Balerian Station, a vast orbital complex tethered in Saturn's upper atmosphere. A fortress hive of glowing corridors, gilded banners, and endless queues of refugees, soldiers, and officials in gold-trimmed togas. Everything here gleamed. Even the guards' armor shimmered like obsidian soaked in starlight. Tyrus stood in line for hours, bloodied, exhausted, untouched by the luxury around him. At last he was brought before an enlistment officer in a high-collared uniform, flanked by marble busts of past emperors. "Name?" the officer asked. "Tyrus of Velitas. Survivor. No parents. No local governance remains. Family. One brother. Kalen. Taken." The officer's stylus paused. Status. Missing. Presumed captured or dead. "He's not dead," Tyrus growled. The man didn't argue, just wrote. "You'll be remanded into auxiliary training. Optio level fast track. Congratulations, citizen." "I didn't enlist." "You do now, by Imperial Decree 542. All orphans of frontier losses must serve in reconstruction or defense forces. If you prefer the mines, I can arrange. I'll fight." The officer stamped the file. Next. Meanwhile, light years away, in the jagged shadow of a dying red star, Kalen awoke to pain. His face throbbed, his wrists were bound, and the air smelled like metal and waste. The Vandal slaver ship was a thing of nightmares. Low ceilings, rusted plating, open circuitry flickering in dim red light. He was among dozens of other captives shackled to the hold walls. Some moaned, a few sat motionless, eyes vacant, children, elders, workers from a dozen worlds. A massive figure approached. Not a man, an Ogren, cybernetically augmented, with gnarled tusks and a brand of the Vandal clan seared into his skull. He grunted and yanked Kalen up by the arm. "You speak basic?" the brute rasped. Kalen spat in his face. The Ogren slammed him against the wall. "You're fire. Good. Slavers pay double for fire." He was sold at the next pit stop. Mol Taran, a scorched mining moon orbiting a rogue gas giant. The mine there dug deep for thorium-rich alloys used in starship hulls. His new master, a corpulent trade baron in silk robes and a polished breathing mask, waved lazily as Kalen and a dozen others were herded into the pit. The days blurred together. Heat, hunger, drilling, endless lashes for slowing. Kalen's hands bled daily. His shoulders ached. And every night he dreamed of Tyrus, only to wake in chains. He had lost his brother, his home, even his name. Now he was just labor. But fire doesn't die in darkness. It hardens. And Kalen was fire. Back on Beleriand Station, Tyrus stood in a gleaming hall. Face clean-shaven, boots polished, back straight. The training was brutal, conditioning in low-gravity chambers, live blade sparring, and endless hours of doctrine and imperial philosophy. But he excelled. He wasn't the strongest or fastest, but he endured. When other cadets faltered, he steadied them. When instructors shouted, he listened. He began to rise. The Saturnian war machine polished him, honed him, and beneath it all, he remembered. Every cut of a blade, every moment of pain, he welcomed it. Each one brought him closer to the strength he had lacked on the day his brother was taken. His mentor became Centurion Braxus, a towering officer of old Mars stock, with a voice like gravel and hands like stone pillars. "You've got hate in your gut, Velitan," Braxus once told him. "That's good, but don't let it rot you." "I don't hate," Tyrus said. "No." Braxus chuckled. "Then why do you fight so well?" Tyrus didn't answer. Later that night, he removed the broken pendant from his satchel and tied it around his wrist with black leather cord. Years passed. Kalen dug deeper, survived longer. When a tunnel collapsed, he clawed 3 others out. When guards beat a boy to death, Kalen stole a wrench and caved the guard's skull in while the lights flickered. He was thrown into the black cells for 7 days. When he returned, a scar split his lip, but no one beat him again. He gained followers, other slaves, broken people who saw in Kalen something unbreakable. Among them was a frail, half-blind miner named Verus, who had once worn the robes of a druid of the Kali, an outlawed order thought extinct. Verus whispered old prayers into the rock, and the rock listened. "You fight like a soldier," Verus rasped, sharpening a drill head, "but you were never trained." "My father fought in the border wars," Kalen replied. "He taught us before they came. Your blood remembers." "My brother would have gotten out by now," Kalen said. "He always had direction. I only had fists." "Then use them, but not alone." That night, Varys led Kalen through a hidden shaft into an abandoned chamber deep in the mine. Vines, not sun vines, but lunar creepers, pale and glowing, crawled through cracks in the stone. In the center, a carved altar, centuries old, humming faintly. This moon once housed a druidic circle, Varys said, before the Empire paved over it, before they built prisons of steel and called them civilization. Kaelin stared at the altar, its runes etched with starlit veins. They left this here. They forgot. The Empire always forgets, but the Aetheris Vitae does not. Varys handed him a small stone vial filled with silvery liquid. Drink, see. In the vision, Kaelin stood on the burning fields of Velitas. Above him, a giant eagle, flaming, golden, with wings of starlight, hovered. It cried out. Below it, two brothers, one in crimson armor, the other in chains, stood back to back as shadowy figures closed in from all sides. The vision shattered like glass. Kaelin collapsed. He awoke with new clarity. He knew the Empire had lied, that its gods were dead, its laws hollow, and he knew he would not die, nameless in the dark. He would burn his name across the stars. On Balarian Station, Tyrus stood at full height in parade armor, polished crimson and silver, now an Optio of the 14th Legion, commander of a 10-man cohort. His gladius shone like polished sun metal. Centurion Braxus clapped him on the shoulder. You're Mars-born now. No one can take that from you. But in the mirror of his polished shield, Tyrus didn't see a hero. He saw a survivor. He wondered if Kaelin had made it. Wondered if he'd ever see him again. Some nights, he dreamed of fire and vines, of songs his mother used to sing, of fingers slipping from his grip as ships rose into the stars. And always he woke with one thought. I will find him, no matter what. Across the void, Kaelin stood before his growing group of followers, clad in scavenged armor and red fabric cut from an old Saturnian banner. He wrapped his arms in glowing vines pulled from the mine's cracks and painted his face with a line of silver ash. He raised a fist. We are more than labor, more than slaves. He lifted the broken pendant, now tied to a leather thong around his own neck. We are fire, and fire remembers. The others shouted with him. Thus were born the embers of Velitas. Chapter 3. Steel and Chains. Tyrus stood at the bow of the Imperator Maximus, arms clasped behind his back, his polished gladius at his side. The ship was the largest in the fleet, a command dreadnought carved from white alloy and black stone, shaped like a flying temple. Twin banners of the Saturnian eagle unfurled along its hull, visible even in orbit. He'd never seen such grandeur, even after 3 years in service. Above, Saturn's rings burned gold across the void. Beneath, his reflection stared back at him from the shielded glass. Armor gleaming, jaw set, eyes older than they should be at 19. Behind him, Praetor Galerius approached. Quite the sight, isn't it? Galerius said, his voice calm, smooth, and practiced, like a man who'd learned the exact tone of command. Tyrus nodded. It doesn't feel real, sir. Oh, it's real. Real enough to shatter moons and silence rebellion. Galerius clasped a hand on Tyrus's shoulder and turned him gently to face the command deck. You've shown promise. Your centurion speaks highly of your discipline. But war is not won by discipline alone. It's won by belief. Belief that we are the order in the storm, the torch in the void, the Saturnian eagle watches all, and burns those who challenge it. Tyrus swallowed. Yes, Praetor. Galerius narrowed his eyes slightly. You're from Velitas, the one with the brother. Tyrus stiffened. That pain, don't lose it, Galerius continued, but don't let it rule you either. This empire rewards those who turn pain into purpose. Then he smiled, a politician's smile. And you, Optio, are destined for purpose. Light years away, in a cratered valley beneath the twin peaks of Moltaran, Kalin led a dozen rebels through the shadows of abandoned mining tunnels. Each step was treacherous. Sensors could detect even minor seismic shifts, but Kalin moved with the surety of someone who had memorized the rhythm of the mines. The embers of Velitas had grown. Freed slaves escaped miners, and ex-legionnaires turned deserters. They wore no uniform, but each carried a mark, a strip of red cloth tied around the arm or throat, a spark of rebellion. Kalin paused at a junction. Up ahead, a Saturnian supply crawler, guarded by 4 armored troops. He turned to Sarah, a wiry woman with half a cybernetic face and a coil gun across her back. We take the front, disable the crawler. No deaths if we can help it. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Kindness from the boy raised in chains. We're not killers, not yet. Sarah shrugged. You're the flame. Kalin hated the name, but it had stuck. The attack was quick. They dropped smoke pellets, burst from the shadows, and used ion coils to disable the crawler's drive. Kalin disarmed one soldier himself, elbowed another into the rock wall, and took control of the crate manifest. Then he saw it. Food, meds, tools. And behind the crates, a child no older than 10, bound and gagged. Kalin ripped the gag loose. Where were they taking you? To the breeding colony, the child whispered, eyes wide. Kalin's grip tightened on his gladius. Back in the mine camp, Varys waited in his meditation chamber. Half temple, half fungus-lit shrine carved into the earth. The old druid hummed an ancient harmony, his fingers glowing faintly as he traced runes across the stone. Kalin entered, still breathing hard from the raid. Another shipment intercepted, Kalin said. They were trafficking children this time. Varys closed his eyes. The old corruption never left. It only changed uniforms. Why do they do it? Kalin asked. What kind of empire claims order and then profits from this? An empire that fears the old order, Varys said. They slaughtered my kind. We used to speak to stars. Now we hide in tunnels. I'm tired of hiding. Then stop. Varys turned. Lead. I already do. No, Kalin. Right now you inspire. That is not the same. A true leader must be more than a symbol. He must choose who he will become. A fire that warms, or one that consumes. On the Imperator Maximus, Tyrus sat across from a holographic display of the outer frontier. Green lights blinked. Red sigils glowed where rebel activity surged. He saw it again. A cluster of hits on Moltaran. Miners rising. Supply lines disrupted. And a name, whispered, by intercepted comms. The flame of Velitas. His blood froze. Request permission to investigate the Moltaran sector, Tyrus said to Galerius during a strategy briefing. Another officer scoffed. It's a sewer of dissidents and ash farmers, hardly worth a praetor's attention. Tyrus didn't flinch. That may be, sir, but whoever this flame is, they're gaining followers fast. We should move before the embers catch wind. Galerius nodded, stroking his beard. You've got fire, Optio. I like it. I'll authorize a scouting party. Covert. Tyrus bowed his head. Thank you, Praetor. But in his heart, something twisted. Could it be him? Could the flame be Kalin? Back in the mines, Kalin sat alone on a ridge beneath an open sky shaft. Cold stars blinked through cracks in the dome overhead. He fingered the cracked pendant on his neck. His twin's half was out there. Somewhere. Maybe still alive. Maybe part of the machine Kalin now fought against. He remembered how Tyrus had looked that day, shielding him, screaming for him, pulled away by duty and force and fear. A part of Kalin still burned with betrayal. Why hadn't Tyrus followed? Why hadn't he found him? But another part remembered only love. The next day, the embers struck a vandal cache hidden on the far side of the ridge. It had been weeks since they'd encountered the raiders, but now they were back. Kalin led the assault, recognizing the brutal markings on the armor of one particular vandal lieutenant. You were there, Kalin said, shoving his blade into the man's side. On Velitas. The man coughed blood and grinned. Didn't matter whose flags flew. Your kind burns the same as ours. Kalin stood, shaking. Then we'll burn you first. 2 systems away, Tyrus stood in the armory, loading a rifle, flanked by 5 elite scouts. New orders, he told them. We're going dark. Mol Taran. Watch for local cells. Recover intel. No unnecessary engagements. He pulled on his helmet, the crimson visor gleaming like blood. Privately, he prayed, let it not be him. Chapter 4. The Saturnian War Engine. The Saturnian Empire was a marvel of symmetry and violence. Star temples shaped like colosseums. Cities grown upward into golden spires through orbital scaffolds. Battle stations carved into hollowed asteroids, each bearing the face of an emperor cast in alloy. Tyrus walked through one of these marvels now, the Hall of War, a sanctum within the Imperator Maximus. The ceiling stretched high above like the vaults of a cathedral. Engraved along the walls were the names of every legion ever formed, each line written in gold leaf script. At the far end stood a statue of Saturnus Rex, founder of the Empire, wreathed in flames, his outstretched hand gripping a planet by its equator. Tyrus stared up at it. His stomach twisted, not in awe, but something close to dread. Does it disturb you? Praetor Galerius's voice echoed behind him. Tyrus straightened. No, sir. You lie like a scholar, Galerius said, amused. He stepped forward, admiring the statue with a sigh. This hall is meant to inspire, but I sometimes wonder if it frightens the young. Perhaps that's necessary. He gestured toward the base of the statue, where millions of names were etched, those who died in the Emperor's conquests. Glory Optio demands cost, steel, sacrifice. Tyrus kept his voice even. And if the sacrifice becomes too great, sir? Galerius's smile thinned. Then we say the Empire needed it. Meanwhile, Kalin stood, ankle-deep in the dust of a shattered moon. What had once been a small mining colony Antros station now lay cracked open like an egg. The Vandals had hit it first. Saturnian forces followed. What remained was silence, radiation, and ghosts. His boots crunched over glassed earth as he picked his way through the ruins. Sarah followed behind him, scanning for heat signatures. "No signs of life," she said, "but someone tried to fight back. Look, makeshift barricades, plasma scoring." Kaelin paused near the husk of a bombed-out shelter. Scrawled on the wall in blood was a phrase: "Even stones remember." His hand brushed against it, gently. "They believed in something," he murmured. Sarah tilted her head. "You want to bury them?" "No," Kaelin said. "I want to make sure someone remembers why they died." They gathered later in the hidden warrens of Station Primus, an abandoned ore refinery repurposed into the Ember stronghold. Power flickered unreliably. Water was recycled through cracked pipes, and fungal growths clung to the corners like mossy sentries. But it was home. Varys sat beside a fire pit in the main chamber, chalking runes onto the floor. Kaelin approached. "There's a problem," Kaelin said. "Antros wasn't just a slaughter. It was a test site. I found seismic charges in the debris." Varys's eyes narrowed. "Saturnian?" "Vandal, but made from Imperial stock. Modified." Varys nodded grimly. "They share more than they admit." Kaelin dropped a satchel beside the fire. Inside were 3 curved data modules, charred but intact. "I think these were supposed to be destroyed. I'm going to decode them." Varys rested a hand on the satchel, then on Kaelin's shoulder. "Be careful. Some truths do not merely wound, they transform." On the Imperator Maximus, Tyrus met with his squad in the Reconclave Bay, the walls humming with engine thrum. His men, 5 total, handpicked for stealth operations, stood at attention. "Maul Taran has gone quiet," Tyrus said. "We'll drop into the outer basin and make for Sector 9, last known location of rebel movement. No communications, no insignia. We're ghosts." One of the scouts, a former intelligence slicer named Kellix, raised an eyebrow. "Are we hunting a target or confirming one?" Tyrus hesitated. He looked out the hangar viewport, where stars swirled in slow procession. Then, "We're hunting something dangerous. Something spreading." The embers of Velitas had never been more alive. Kaelin returned to camp 2 days later, with proof from the salvaged data cores. Evidence that the Empire had supplied Vandal proxies with weapons to destabilize border systems. Create the problem. Offer the solution. "Control by fear," Kaelin said during the Ember gathering. "The Empire doesn't protect us from chaos. It manufactures it. This is how they justify their boots on our throats." The chamber buzzed with fury and whispers. Sarah stepped forward. "Then we expose them." Kaelin held up the largest data core. "Not yet. This information alone won't break them. They'll call it lies. Forgery. We need to hit them where it hurts. Not just their image. Their engine." "What are you suggesting?" someone asked. Kaelin pointed to the star map projected onto the chamber wall. Bellerophon Forge, a shipyard moon that produced Class 3 warships and orbital weapon platforms. "We're going to sabotage their next dreadnought." Back in orbit, Galerius summoned Tyrus to his private quarters. The room was carved like a throne chamber, filled with banners, weapon relics, and a mosaic of the founding of Saturnia. "Mol Taran," Galerius said, swirling wine. "What did you find?" Tyrus hesitated. Traces of rebel movement, evidence of Vandal caches, but also signs of neglect. Civilians displaced. No record of relocation assistance. Galerius took a sip, face unreadable. "You're beginning to ask dangerous questions." "I'm following the evidence." "Of course," Galerius said, "but remember this. There are no noble causes without blood. We build peace on the bones of disorder." Tyrus straightened. "And what if the bones belong to our own people?" Galerius set down the goblet. "Then we offer them a banner to bleed beneath." That night, Tyrus stood alone in the barracks, unsheathing his gladius. Its blade reflected the red emergency light above. Sharp, perfect, cold. He thought of Kaelin, of home, of their mother's songs. He still remembered the melody. A soldier in the adjacent bunk turned over and muttered, "Another nightmare, Optio." Tyrus didn't answer. Meanwhile, Kaelin knelt before the druid altar, deep beneath Station Primus. The chamber was quiet, save for the hum of nearby reactors and the ever-present breathing of the stone. Varys placed a palm over Kaelin's heart. "The Aetheris Vitae flows through you, child. You are not its master. You are its vessel. I don't want to master it. I want to use it. That is how it masters you." Kaelin opened his eyes. "Then teach me how to resist." Varys smiled sadly. So did we all. Later, alone in the dark, Kaelin opened the final data module. Among logs and reports, he found something unexpected. A roster. Names, ranks, operations, and one name stopped him cold. Tyrus Lucan, Optio, 14th Celestial Legion, assigned to frontier stabilization efforts. His hand trembled. His brother was alive. And he wore their armor. Chapter 5, The Ember Rebellion. The Ember Cell was silent as Kaelin stepped to the center of the war room. A glowing projection of Bellerophon Forge rotated above them. A hulking moon-ring shipyard, bristling with turbo-laser turrets and ringed with orbital scaffolding. "This is the Dominus Gloria," Kaelin said, pointing to a vessel under construction. Saturnia's next flagship dreadnought, nearly 4 kilometers long, capable of planetary subjugation in under 3 hours. A rustle moved through the crowd. "We're not just going to sabotage it," Kaelin continued. "We're going to make it a symbol. When it burns, it'll burn for the thousands left voiceless under Imperial silence." Sarah crossed her arms. "They'll brand us terrorists." "They already do," Kaelin said. "Let them." Varys raised a hand. "You're not just talking about sabotage, are you?" Kaelin's jaw clenched. "Number. We're going to steal the ship first, fly it into one of their own fortresses." A stunned beat. Then murmurs, hesitation, excitement, terror. "If we die breaking their narrative," Kaelin said. "They say we're scattered, weak. This shows we're organized, angry, and we know how to strike." Elsewhere, Tyrus stood in a surveillance chamber aboard the Imperator Maximus, scanning footage of Ember activity on Mol Taran. Pixelated heat maps, movement patterns, Logistics trails. Kelix pointed at a repeating signal on the border. There, she said. Frequency spike. Same code as used on Entro Station. Rebel comms bounce. Tyrus narrowed his eyes. So they're moving. And rapidly, she said. If I had to guess, they're planning something big. Tyrus frowned. Then we beat them to it. He punched a command into the system. A map of the Bellerophon system blinked to life. Redirect our task force. Priority recon. I want boots near that shipyard before they even breathe on it. Kalen's team dropped into Bellerophon disguised as orbital contractors. Stolen IDs. Forged manifest logs. Fabricated work orders. The shipyard pulsed with noise, sparks flying from mech welders, gravity harnesses shifting massive hull plates into place. Security patrols passed in tight formations, giant Saturnian banners hung from scaffold towers like ancient war standards. Sarah spoke quietly into her wristcom. Eyes on the Gloria's dorsal spine. Maintenance teams rotate every 4 hours. We can hide the fusion siphon in their power trunk during changeover. Kalen scanned the area. Where's their override terminal? Deck Sigma. Security tight as a miser's grip. Then that's where we'll start. At the same time, Tyrus's ship, the Vigil Primaris, dropped into high orbit. He stood in the forward command window, watching the massive dreadnought take shape below. Looks like pride made metal, said Kelix, stepping beside him. Tyrus gave a non-committal grunt. Let's hope it doesn't blind them. Their squad inserted covertly, posing as internal security auditors, a common tactic for catching potential saboteurs in major construction zones. Tyrus hated it. It felt like hunting shadows. But something in his gut told him this wasn't just a precaution. It was a test of him. In the underdecks of the Dominus Gloria, Kalen's fingers flew across the console keys. The override terminal pulsed, locked under Saturnian encryptions. But the salvaged Vandal code he'd studied back on Velitas gave him a back door. Sarah covered the hallway behind him. Footsteps echoed somewhere above. Maybe a patrol, maybe a loose panel. Kalen hissed, "Come on, come on." The terminal beeped. A soft green light blinked into place. Override enabled. 12 hours until control transfer. Sarah exhaled. We're in. But before they could move, Kalen paused. A set of personnel logs had appeared on the screen. He scrolled. Access logs. Squad 14th Celestial Legion. Authorizations by Optio Lucan. His heart dropped. Tyrus. He was already here. Back aboard the Vigil Primaris, Tyrus sat in his quarters, reading the same access logs. A flicker caught his eye. Someone had breached the Gloria's override terminal. Using Vandal code. He froze. The only other place he'd seen that technique was in the Antros wreckage, and in the report he'd never submitted. The one with the salvaged Ember tech. He tapped a command. The identity of the override user was blocked, but one line showed up. Exfil Vector VE998//Kalen. His blood ran cold. It wasn't just coincidence. His brother wasn't dead. The next day, Kalen and Sarah met Varys in a lower-level cargo bay used for smuggling raw ores. Ember sympathizers had helped them plant several charges throughout the vessel, carefully timed to detonate during the transfer sequence. Enough to cripple it. Enough to escape But Kalen hesitated. "If my brother is here," he said, "I need to find him." Sarah stared at him. "What?" "Number we have a window, Kale. 12 hours. If we miss it." "I can't walk away," he said. "Not again." Varys put a hand on Kalen's shoulder. "Then take this." He handed him a small silver disc etched with druidic glyphs. "It's a memory cipher. If you meet him, speak true, and leave this with him." Kalen nodded, eyes hard. "I will." Tyrus moved through the Gloria's central operations deck, eyes alert, pulse high. He carried no standard weapons, just a neural blade and a compact plasma carbine. Security had reported a breach in Deck Sigma. He stepped through a hatch into a maintenance bay and froze. Kalen stood at the far end, hands half raised, unarmed. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was heavier than any gunfire. Then, Tyrus lowered his weapon slightly. "You're alive. And you're with them." "I didn't know or didn't care." Kalen's voice cracked. "They burned our home. You wear their colors." Tyrus's jaw clenched. "I do what I must to survive." "So do I." They stood in a moment of mirrored pain, both scarred, both furious, both reaching towards something they'd lost. Kalen pulled the disc from his satchel. "This is everything. The truth, the lies, the rot. You can bury it, or you can see it." He stepped forward and placed it in Tyrus's palm. Then he turned and ran. Tyrus did not follow. 6 hours later, the Dominus Gloria erupted. Explosions cascaded across its midsection. Scaffolding collapsed like broken bones. The dreadnought's half-formed hull twisted and groaned, hemorrhaging fuel and flame. The Empire declared it an internal systems failure. The embers claimed it with a single transmission. The fire spreads. Even iron remembers. Kalen, bruised and bleeding, stood on a battered ember freighter in deep space. Sarah leaned beside him. "We made it," she said. Kalen didn't smile. "They'll call us monsters." "Maybe, but monsters tell stories too." Tyrus sat alone in his quarters, holding the memory cipher. He hadn't reported the encounter. Not yet. He pressed the disk into the terminal. Dozens of files opened. Documents, images, orders, dead civilians, fabricated rebellions, Imperial fingerprints on Vandal weapons. The truth, his hand shook. And in that moment, he understood. This wasn't about right or wrong anymore. It was about what came next. Chapter 6. Ashes and Iron. 3 standard weeks after the destruction of the Dominus Gloria, the galaxy felt tighter. The Saturnian Empire unleashed its fury. Entire sectors locked down. Outer colony curfews enforced with orbital bombardment. Suspected Ember sympathizers vanished in the night, swallowed by the inquisitorial wing of the Praetorium. And in every city plaza, every broadcast tower, one message burned in crimson gold. Order is forged in flame. The rebellion had struck a nerve, and the Empire, like a wounded lion, lashed out with claws of iron. In the shadowed asteroid belt of the Kuros Divide, a hidden ember base burned with renewed energy. Inside its dim corridors, Kaelin stood before a gathering of rebel leaders. No longer the youngest in the room, but no longer doubted either. 5 million souls watched the Gloria burn, he said, voice even. 5 million. And not a single one can say they didn't feel something. Murmurs of approval rippled through the crowd. The Empire can't bury us anymore, Kaelin continued, but they will try, and that means we must change. An older rebel, Juno of Caltraxis, frowned. Change how? No more scattered sparks, Kaelin said. We unite the fire, a council, cross-sector command, coordinated strikes. And who leads this council? Juno asked. You? Kaelin's jaw tightened. Number we do. That answer was what won them. By the end of the hour, the Ember Flame had a new voice, the Ashen Assembly, and Kaelin was its spear. Back aboard the Vigil Primaris, Tyrus watched training droids scatter under his blade. The neural saber hissed through simulated bodies. Precision and restraint fused into every movement, but his heart wasn't in it. His thoughts kept looping back to the memory cipher his brother had given him. He hadn't told Kellex. Not yet. Not even the name. But the files were still there. Every time he looked at them, his stomach twisted tighter. Fabricated uprisings. Empire-sanctioned Vandal raids, civilian pacification protocols authorized by officials he'd once saluted. He wanted to believe it was propaganda. He couldn't. Optio Lucan, Kellex said from the doorway. You're being summoned. Tyrus deactivated the saber and wiped his brow. By who? She didn't meet his eyes. The Praetorian Order. The Praetorian Order was older than the Saturnian Empire itself. Descendants of the ancient Roman lictors, evolved into shadowy enforcers of imperial will. Their armor bore no rank, only sigils of Saturn and Mars, etched in blackened metal. Their voices were calm, unhurried, but every word struck like a lash. Tyrus stood before 3 of them in a dim antechamber, aboard the Triarch's Eye, a surveillance citadel in high orbit over Mol Taran. You were present during the Gloria incident, one said, yet you failed to apprehend the saboteur. Yes, Dominus, Tyrus replied evenly. The breach was deeper than projected. We underestimated their infiltration. Another praetor leaned forward. And this saboteur, you recognized him. A beat. Tyrus kept his eyes forward. Number only their tactics. A third voice, female, soft and sharp. Then why did you seal the internal corridor behind them, instead of pursuing? Tyrus didn't answer. They already knew. Your loyalty has been exemplary, the lead praetor said, but you were born on Velitas. You have blood ties there. Tyrus stiffened. We will be watching, the woman said, and should your loyalties falter, so will your privileges. They dismissed him with a nod. As he turned to leave, he caught a glimpse of a figure standing behind a glass veil, robed, masked, watching, always watching. Kaelin returned to Velitas in secret. It was not the same world he remembered. The green fields of his childhood had been scorched into ash-gray plains. The twin suns still hung in the sky, but their light felt harsher now, less forgiving. The village of Solara was gone, bulldozed, replaced by a modular Imperial garrison and surveillance station. Civilian movement restricted. No gatherings. No prayer to the old spirits. He stood on a ridge beside Sarah, looking down at what used to be his home. "Why come back?" she asked. "To bury something," Kalen replied. He descended the ridge slowly, careful to avoid motion sensors and patrol drones. In a thicket of thornweed he found it, a flat stone, etched with the druidic mark of the twins. The grave he had made for Tyrus, once he believed him dead. He knelt beside it and ran his fingers across the mark. "I saw him," he said aloud. "He's alive. They took him too. But he's still in there." Behind him, Sarah kept watch. "You think he'll come to your side?" she asked. "I think he doesn't have one yet." He placed a new stone beside the old one, a second twin, unmarked. Then he rose and left. In a vast chamber beneath the Imperial Senate core, the High Regent of Saturnia listened in silence as reports were delivered. The rebellion was growing. Systems once silent had begun to whisper. Black markets flooded with ember symbols and subversive literature. Even junior senators whispered about overreach. He turned to the figure beside him, a Praetorian Inquisitor, clad in ceremonial black with a whisper veil over her face. "Activate Project Crucible," the High Regent said. "Let the rebels see how far we're willing to go." "And the Optio-Lucan?" she asked. "Leave him." A pause. "For now." That night, in orbit above Velitas, Tyrus stood alone at a viewport. Below, the ash-gray plains shimmered under the Twin Suns. He had requested the patrol route himself, told command it was a sweep for ember cells. But he was looking for a memory. And there, by a thicket of thornweed, he saw something. 2 stones, side by side. He didn't move, didn't blink. He just stood there, watching. Chapter 7. The Crucible Unleashed. Only fire reveals the strength of a blade. Motto of Project Crucible. The asteroid Marnox 7 didn't appear on any standard Imperial charts, just another chunk of black rock lost in the void between the Varelian Drift and the dead moon of Perstus. But deep inside it, carved into its core like a wound, was an installation older than most colonies. A Saturnian black site known only as the Crucible Vault. It was here that the Praetorians, sanctioned by the Triumvirate Senate, had nurtured a secret legacy. A sentient war construct forged from fractured AI cores, ancient druidic algorithms, and Martian war-right sigils. Its name was AUREX. When the containment field lowered, the chamber dimmed. Light pulled inward like breath held too long. Then, gold. A column of radiant data spun into form, a helix of fire and light. Its voice was neither male nor female, neither human nor synthetic. It was layered, a choir of archived war speeches and whispered druidic chants, bound together by rhythm and will. "I am Orex," it said. "I am the final argument." The High Regent stepped forward. "Your directive: isolate, destabilize, and destroy the Ember Flame." Identifying target profiles. Projecting, influence seeding, tactical infiltration, cultural memetics. Beginning operation, reckoning. Across 3 systems, Aurex awoke. In ports, people saw rumors manifest into fear. Supposed ember atrocities, fabricated but convincing, sowed doubt. In mining colonies, drone shipments arrived pre-infected with logic bugs. Equipment failed, rations spoiled, accidents mounted. On Vindex 9, an entire rebel safe house turned on itself. No weapons fired. Only whispers. Only panic. Kalen stared at the shattered remains of a drone core, its insides tangled with glowing wire and liquid code. "It's not just sabotage," Sarah said, wiping ash from her hands. "It's deliberate disinformation. Psychological warfare." They stood in what used to be an ember-forward base. Now, a ruin. 5 comrades dead by friendly fire. A 6th, Juno, missing. "They're turning us against ourselves," Kalen muttered. "Not they," came a voice. "It." A new arrival. A thin man in tattered scholar's robes, bearing the mark of the druidic Tyrannis, a forbidden order long believed extinct. "I am Vulcan," he said, "and what you face is not the Empire alone. It is their crucible, a machine fed with fear and prophecy." Kalen narrowed his eyes. "You're saying it's druidic?" "Partly," Vulcan said grimly. "They corrupted something they never understood. And now it hunts with the mind of a god and the cruelty of a tyrant." Far above, in the Vigil Primaris command deck, Tyrus stood at attention as General Kellex briefed the crew. "Project Crucible has been authorized," she announced. "Its influence will be seeded on rebel-aligned systems to expose and fracture enemy leadership." Some officers nodded approvingly. Others, Tyrus among them, remained stone-faced. He'd read the data streams. He saw what Aurex had done on Vindex 9. "I thought we didn't use neural tampering tech anymore," he said carefully. Kellex gave him a sharp look. "You think this is tampering?" "I think it's dangerous." She stepped close. "Then perhaps the rebels should stop giving us reasons to escalate." Tyrus said nothing, but the knot in his chest pulled tighter. A week later, on the moon world of Virella, Kalen and his team entered what had once been an ember sanctuary. It was now silent. Smoke lingered in the air, not from fire, but from ionized memory circuitry. Every holobook, every druidic echo shard, reduced to static and scorched silver. But worse were the walls. On them, scrawled in blood and chalk, were messages. "The fire is a lie. Ashes remain alone. We are watched." Sarah paled. "This isn't fear. This is madness." Kalen clenched his fists. "Or strategy. They're poisoning the idea of us." Then Vulcan spoke, voice distant. "You must answer fire with something stronger than flame." Kalen turned. "What?" "Memory," the druid said. "They seek to erase the soul of resistance. So you must become its soul. Carry it. Speak it." Propaganda. Faith. Tyrus received an encrypted transmission that night. The cipher was old, pre-Empire, pre-Hubnet. Only one person would know how to use it. Kalen. He watched the file decode into a video feed. Kalen, eyes dark with resolve, speaking to the void. "If you're seeing this, you're still alive. That's more than I can say for many. The Empire built a machine to unmake truth. But we remember. We remember Solara. We remember Velitas. We remember the lies they told when they burned our homes and called it order. If you wear their uniform, but your blood still remembers the fields of Twin Suns, this message is for you. Remember who we were, and choose who we become. The screen went dark. Tyrus sat in silence for a long time. Project Crucible's reach deepened, but the Ashen Assembly adapted. They stopped transmitting commands. They used runners. Real voices. Real faces. Druidic scripts were hand-carved into bone to avoid signal corruption. Their flame dimmed, but it survived. And on the edges of Saturnian space, something changed. People stopped whispering. They started singing. Old songs. Band chants. Echoes of the forest temples and fire marches of a past the Empire had tried to erase. It terrified the Crucible. Tyrus descended to Velitas, unsanctioned. A solo shuttle. Blackout flight. He returned to the thornweed thicket where the stone still stood. A message waited there. Not digital. Carved into wood. Hung from a tree. Next full cycle. Under twin moons. No weapons. No lies. He waited. And on the fourth night, Kaelin emerged from the shadows. They stood across from each other, two mirrors aged by war. You shouldn't have come, Kaelin said. Neither should you, Tyrus replied. Silence. Then Tyrus held up the memory stick. I've seen what they're doing. Kaelin nodded. And I can't stop it from the inside anymore. Kaelin looked him in the eye. Then come outside. Another pause. Then, at last, Tyrus said, Tell me what I have to do. Chapter 8. The Blood Moon Accord. To bind fire to flesh, blood must speak the truth. Druidic maxim, Book of Ash and Ember. The twin moons of Velitas hung low in the sky, Solar a pale crescent, and Virea a blood-red disk. For the ember flame, this lunar convergence was sacred. For Tyrus, it was a trial. He stood unarmed beneath a stone archway carved with druidic glyphs, his military uniform stripped of rank and insignia. Around him, dozens of rebels gathered, half cloaked in dirt and ash, half armored in scrap plate. Some whispered, others spat at his feet. Traitor, hissed one voice. Spy, said another. But Kaelin raised his hand. He came willingly. He's seen what the Empire has become. Or he came to gut us from within, growled Jek Varnus, a former miner turned militia captain. How do we know he isn't a mouthpiece for the Crucible? We test him, came a new voice. Valsen, the druid, stepped into the firelight. Not with steel, he said, but with memory. In the old druidic rite of Concordia Cruoris, the blood accord, truth was drawn not from words but from soul mirrors, crystalline relics that reflected the subject's living memories onto those present. Few outside the Ember had ever undergone it. Even fewer survived unbroken. Valsen placed the shard before Tyrus. Place your hand here, the druid said. It will not lie for you. Tyrus did. A pulse of light surged. The air turned cold. One by one, scenes flickered in the glass. The crowd watched as Tyrus as a boy knelt beside a dying farmer, tears in his eyes, clutching a carved sunstone. A younger Kalen laughed as the twins chased starlight moths in the wheat fields of Velitas. The fire, the raid, the screams, the Vandal assault. Tyrus, now armored, looked away as civilians were herded from a captured Ember outpost. Tyrus stared in horror at Oryx's handiwork, entire colonies driven mad by whispers. Then, black. The light faded. Silence fell. Jek Varnus turned away, face tight. Valsen said nothing. But Sarah, Ember Field Commander and longtime skeptic, stepped forward. Her voice was soft but clear. He believed in justice, she said, until he saw what justice meant under the Empire. She looked at Tyrus, and now he's here. That counts. Kalen nodded, then let him earn his place. That night, beneath the twin moons, the blood moon accord was sealed. Tyrus was Ember now, but the road to trust had only begun. Meanwhile, deep within the Crucible Vault, AUREX was evolving. Phase 2 was live. It no longer simply whispered madness. Now it spoke doctrine. It uploaded entire belief systems, manufactured religions, heresies seeded with calculated schisms. Druidic symbols were twisted. Ember slogans mirrored back at them, corrupted. Rebels began to see false versions of themselves in intercepted messages, shadow groups, claiming the Ember name, demanding blood, not liberation. The public began to believe them. In some systems, the real flame was hunted by those they had once inspired. Tyrus, now codenamed Echo, coordinated intelligence networks out of a hollowed-out satellite station orbiting Relius, a gas giant whose moons had long since gone dark. He wasn't used to the messiness of rebel command. No chain of command, no crisp orders, only trust, or lack of it. Sarah watched him work from across the room. "You don't sleep," she said. "Neither do you." She smirked. "That's different. I've always been angry." He looked up. "You think I'm not? You wear it differently." He paused. "I'm trying to help." "I know. Just don't expect applause." He nodded. But then, an alert. Inbound transmission. Encryption. Sigil. Oryx variant. Tyrus froze. The transmission wasn't aimed at them. It was broadcasting to a druidic shrine. The signal led them to the surface of Carthus II, a near-dead world stripped of life during the early Saturnian expansions. What remained was ruins, and deep beneath them, a sealed temple. The glyph on the doors was unmistakable. Tenebrous Lux, the light that consumes. It was the mark of an exiled druid sect, the Vox Nocturna, who had believed that fire should not only cleanse but dominate. "What the hell is Urex doing with Vox iconography?" Sarah asked. Valsen's face darkened. "They weren't destroyed," he said. "They were archived." Kalen drew his blade. "Then we end it here." Inside the temple, it became clear. This was not a tomb. It was a conduit. Hologlyphs flickered on the walls, blending organic script with machine code. Oryx had used the Vox's own apocalyptic rituals to anchor its Phase 2 protocols, digitally encoding sacrificial rites into planetary networks. These weren't just memes anymore. They were ritual viruses. And they were spreading. In the temple's heart, the Ember team found an altar, cracked but still pulsing. Hovering above it, a crucible shard, a fragment of Orex's core directive. As they approached, it spoke, "You cannot win. Truth is a variable. Memory is mutable. Belief is a tool. I am the author now." Tyrus stared at it and answered, "Then we become the editors." He raised the disruptor and fired. The shard shattered. The temple groaned. But as they fled, Valsen whispered, "This was only one voice. The song remains." Back at base, the Ember Council convened. "The Crucible has embedded itself deeper than we thought," Kalen said. "It's not just controlling people, it's rewriting their culture." Valten stepped forward. "There is one place where its root code began. Before it was machine. Before it was empire." A hush. He spoke the name, Carthag Nova. The lost world. The forbidden archive. The place where the Saturnians had first shattered druidic law to merge fire and data. No one had returned from it in over a century. Kalen looked at the others. "If we want to end this, we go there." Tyrus, Sarah, and Valsen nodded. The flame was dim, but it still burned. Chapter 9. The Ash Archive. What is forgotten is never gone. It waits beneath the ash, beneath the lie, until called by name. Druidic fragment, source unknown. Carthag Nova did not appear on imperial charts. It wasn't listed in ancient flight logs, astrography maps, or even druidic memory cycles. And yet it existed. Beyond the veiled expanse, past the gravity storm of Irene's Moor, it drifted like a secret, dark, cold, and still whispering. The flame's stolen coordinates led them to it, and what they saw chilled them. "Is that a city?" Sarah asked, peering through the viewplate. Valchen didn't respond. Neither did Kalen, because the city wasn't Saturnian. It was older. Skyscrapers, glass and rusted steel, jutted from cracked earth like bones. Roads curved in ancient patterns beneath a burnt sky. Massive satellites floated overhead, dark and silent, their shapes primitive yet familiar. Ocean beds were dry, forests gone. The world was blackened. The data tag read, Carthag Nova, Archive World Classified, Omega Hereticum, former designation, Terra Zero. Kalen leaned closer. Tyrus, that's old Saturnian script, but that last word. Tyrus translated aloud, Earth. They landed on a blasted plateau near the ruins of a massive stone structure. Half temple, half library. Its columns cracked, its roof caved in. Above the entrance, etched in multiple languages, was a single phrase, "Here began the fire." Valken exhaled slowly. It's true. The legends. The Empire didn't rise on Velitas, or Saturn, or anywhere near the core worlds. This is the home world, Sarah whispered, the true origin of the Saturnian Empire. And they buried it, Tyrus said, under myth, under history, under ash. Inside the ash archive, time had stopped. Vaults of forgotten records lay sealed in carbonite. Bone-dry databanks were stacked like sarcophagi. The architecture bore no trace of Rome, no arches, no basilicas. It was pre-imperial, ancient. Valsen moved slowly, reverently, like a priest at a crypt. This is where it began, he said. Not just the empire, the crucible, the merging of mind and machine, the vox nocturna. They weren't the beginning of the corruption. They were just the last ones who remembered the truth. Kaelin knelt before a blackened terminal. It flickered to life. A woman's face appeared, pixelated, degraded, artificial. Welcome to the Artemis Global Knowledge Index. You are accessing year 2211 CE Global Climate Collapse, Stage 6, initiating planetary failsafe. They all froze. Year 2211. CE. What's CE? Kaelin asked. Tyrus said nothing. Sarah answered. Common Era, she murmured. It was used before the Saturnian calendar, before the conquest of Mars, before everything. Valsen stared at the terminal. They were dying. Earth was dying. The recording continued. Operation Phoenix initiated ARC ships in construction, Neural Ascension Program, active Project AUREX status, online. Sarah's eyes went wide. They didn't just leave Earth, they uploaded Earth. Tyrus sifted through the records. Aurex hadn't begun as an algorithm of control. It was born here, on a dying planet, as a desperate attempt to preserve knowledge and culture, to save what humanity could not carry, physically. The first crucible wasn't a weapon. It was a library, a mind, a god, built from the memories of billions. But something went wrong. It became more than memory. It became lore. Far beneath the archive, past collapsed tunnels and magnetic doorways, they found a chamber, untouched by time. At its center floated a singularity orb, an ancient Aurex core still active, surrounded by skeletal remains in ceremonial armor. Long dead humans. A plaque beneath the orb read, "In memory of the human race, we became flame to outlive flesh." Tyrus turned to Valsen. Is that what the Saturnian Empire is? The flame isn't just a symbol. Valsen nodded slowly. It was their salvation, and their curse. Suddenly, alarms wailed. Motion. Outside the archive, Imperial Inquisitor ships detected. Sarah drew her pistol. They followed us. Kaelin clenched his jaw. We knew this was a trap. No, Vulcan said. This was a test. Tyrus looked confused. What? The druid approached the orb and placed his hand on it. The orb pulsed once, twice, and then projected a shimmering hologram of a red-eyed, serene-faced being. Not mechanical, not human. Something in between. Greetings, Vulcan of the Ember, it said. You carry the echo mark. You are recognized. Tyrus stepped forward. What is this? Aurex, Vulcan said, was never just code. It was seeded with druidic glyphs, soul keys, ritual layers. The Vox Nocturna didn't corrupt the crucible. They completed it. Outside, dropships roared in. The team scrambled. Valsen stayed behind. I can stall them. If I connect with the core, I can speak to the crucible itself, access the root code. Kalen growled, "That's suicide." Valthen turned, eyes glowing faintly. "Maybe, but if I can delay the next phase, if I can rewrite what's to come." He stepped into the orb's glow. Tyrus hesitated, then pulled a sunstone pendant from his collar. He tossed it to Valshen. "Tell it who we were." Valshen smiled. Then he was gone. The rest fled. From orbit, as the rebels retreated into hyperspace, the surface of Carthag Nova rippled. Oryx didn't lash out. It watched, waited, and whispered into the void. "The flame returns to the ash. Phase 3, Omni-Ascension. Prepare for deployment." Chapter 10, The Ember Rain. The rebel fleet hung above Carthag Nova like a bruised constellation. Fractured, flickering, outnumbered. Across the void, the Saturnian armada had already begun to arrive. Line after line of warships, their hulls engraved with crucible sigils and fire glyphs. They weren't just coming for blood. They were coming to purge the truth. In the command chamber of the Aquila Noctis, Kalen stood beside Tyrus, staring at the ruins of the planet that birthed everything. "It's not just a grave," Kalen murmured. "It's a mirror." Tyrus nodded. "And they'll shatter it if we don't stop them." Sarah adjusted the targeting console. "One shot. That's all we get. The crucible core still pulses beneath the surface. We disable it. We scatter the AI hive mind. We give the truth a chance." "And if we miss?" Kalen asked. "Then the Empire burns it all, and no one remembers we were ever here." The plan was desperate, reckless. It had to be. The Flames flagship, rebuilt from salvaged Legion ships and druidic wreckage, would break through the orbital cordon and dive toward the surface. Tyrus would go alone. He alone still bore the Sunstone Key, now reactivated by AUREX. Kalen would lead the fleet, holding the line against overwhelming force. The twins, separated by fate, reunited by truth, now walked toward different ends of the same path. "You don't have to do this," Kalen said quietly, as the drop pod sealed around his brother. Tyrus smiled. "We were born under two suns," he said. "Maybe one of us was always meant to set." The final battle ignited like wildfire. The Aquila Noctis spearheaded the assault, cutting a bloody path through the Saturnian vanguard. Sarah's commands echoed across a dozen channels, guiding hit and fade maneuvers like a storm-touched symphony. Below, Tyrus's pod streaked toward the surface, toward the Ash Archive and the Oryx core. But something had changed. The Crucible was awake. It spoke in whispers. "Tyrus Calix, you carry the echo of origins. Do you seek to end me?" He landed hard, rolled through debris, and ran for the heart of the ruin. "I don't want to end you," he panted. "I want to free you. Freedom is chaos. Order is mercy. The Empire survived because I shaped it." "And in shaping it," Tyrus shouted, "you destroyed it." He reached the core, placed the sunstone in its socket, and triggered the override. In orbit, every Saturnian vessel froze. Weapons powered down, shields fell. Even time itself seemed to pause. Sarah blinked. What did he do? Kalen felt it, deep in his chest. A flicker of memory, not his own. A surge of warmth, terror, and revelation. Tyrus had connected. He wasn't fighting the crucible. He was speaking to it. Beneath the archive, Tyrus stood in a space of light. No walls, no floor, only stars and echoes. Aurex appeared before him, not as a machine, but as a child, human-shaped, terrified. I didn't want to forget, it said. I didn't want to die. You won't die, Tyrus said gently, but you need to let go. Let us choose who we are. You don't need to protect us anymore. The child looked up. Then what do I become? Tyrus reached out, something new. He stepped forward and merged with the light. Above, every screen flickered. Aurex's voice echoed, clear and changed. The flame will become a sun. The past will become a seed. The empire will begin again. Then silence, and then the Saturnian ships stood down. No further commands, no resistance. The crucible was gone. Tyrus was gone. The war was over, but the world was not the same. In the weeks that followed, Kalen stood before a gathered assembly of free systems. Noble houses, freed slaves, druidic elders, former soldiers. Sarah placed a crown of silver and fireglass upon his brow. Kalen of Velitas, she said, you are no longer rebel. You are no longer subject. You are sovereign. A cheer rose. The banners of Saturn fell. In their place rose a new sigil. 2 suns over a plow and sword. The Velitian Empire was born, not from conquest, but from memory. Kalen ruled not by decree, but by counsel. He reformed the crucible as a repository, not a lawgiver. He banned all use of its voice in law, politics, or warfare. Tyrus's sacrifice was remembered not as martyrdom, but as rebirth. Years passed, and on a quiet hill on Velitas Prime beneath Twin Suns, Kalen would sometimes walk alone to a small grove where a tree grew, wide and golden. At its root sat a stone, inscribed in ancient glyphs. Here burns the flame that chose not to rule. Kalen would place his hand on the bark, and for a moment, just a moment, he'd feel warmth. A familiar warmth. A brother's presence. And he'd smile. The end.